So on an individual level, if you were an 18-year-old Tony Robbins, what would you be doing at this moment? What would you be focusing on work-wise? How would you be designing your life for such a world?
I have 5 kids and 5 grandkids, right? So I have a 52-year-old daughter, and I have thanks to COVID, a 4-year-old daughter. So COVID was good to me. I was home. So I look at my especially my grandkids and my daughter, and I say they're entering a world that none of us have known before. And so how do I arm them for it? And the answer is a couple of things. Number one, I have to teach them not to do what most people in the world do. Most people you talk to, of any, even quote, successful people, whatever that means, they're stressed all the time. Stress. I'm so stressed. You hear people talk about stress all the time. It's like they argue about who's more stressed. And I look at that and go, why are they stressed? And the answer is because they're managing their life. We're not made to manage circumstances. We're made to create. We were created by something. Call it your creator, call it the universe, call it God, whatever you want to call it. And we were made to create. And when we create, we're alive. When we just try to maintain or manage or hold on to something, if we're just caught up in making a living instead of designing a life, life is a bitch. And that's why so many people have so many challenges. So I'm teaching my kids to be creators, and I teach them the second piece, the most important thing I believe that's made me successful. And anyone I've ever interviewed, you interviewed 1 million people, you see if you agree or disagree with me. The 3 most important skills in life now are the ones that allow you to learn more rapidly. If you learn rapidly, you can win no matter what happens with the technology. And what are those 3 skills? Number 1, the skill of pattern recognition. When you can recognize patterns, you eliminate fear. Fear comes from, this has never happened before. I don't know what this is. Chaos. Like I hear people all the time talk about how we've never been this place politically. We're here in America. We're going to have a civil war. And they don't do any history whatsoever. I have these 2 placards that I have, because back then they didn't have ads, right? They had placards. And one is from Thomas Jefferson talking about Adams, and one from Adams about Jefferson. And they said stuff that make Republicans and Democrats look like they're nice to each other. I mean, it's just unbelievable that stuff they said. This is a cycle. And so when you recognize a pattern, it gives you power, potential power at least. The first power is you're not afraid anymore. You go, no, this is not something that's never happened. This is not something that's going to, I can see this. I can see how this has been dealt with. What took us from living in fear, from being hunter-gatherers or trying to survive every day, didn't know if we're going to survive every day, to being able to stay in one place? What pattern recognition?
I was going to say the seasons, but...
You got it.
Really?
That's it, the seasons. I figured you get it. The seasons, because before that, you could do the right thing at the wrong time and you get pain. And 3 of the 4 seasons are the wrong time. So once we figured out, oh my God, if I plant in the spring and I take care through the hot summer, I get this big reaping. And if I hang on to some of it to make it through the winter, I can live here. I don't have to worry. All my fear disappears. So the minute we understood seasons, it changed humanity. And by the way, there's the seasons to your life. You could say 0 to 21 is springtime. Springtime, how hard is it for something to grow in springtime? If you start a business in an economic spring where everybody's optimistic, you think you're a genius, you're just in the right season, right? Mm-hmm. So 0 to 21, you're taken care of. And that season, you grow like crazy. Somewhere around, roughly, and everyone's different, 21, 22 years old, you go to the next stage, 22 to 42, and that's your summertime. That's the testing period of your life. What happens? You are 21, you've heard all this stuff, and now you go, you know what? I don't know if I believe this bullshit. I want to see what I believe. I'm going to test. All history, all studies of psychology show this is the most difficult time in most people's lives, right? 22 to 42. So if you're in that range and you're listening, I love you. Hang in there. This is your ground. If you keep growing, this is a great time, all right? Somewhere in that range, you make a transition. Somewhere around 30, 35, you're 33, you just got engaged. Congratulations, right? You start to move towards a family. You start to have those experiences. I'm sure yours will be very successful. Many aren't, right? So at 43 to 63, that's the fall. If you planted in the spring, right, and you worked your tail off during that hot summer, now you can do more with your pinky than working around the clock. You know more people, you have relationships, you recognize the patterns, you know what's going on. Nothing's really a shock or surprise to you. You're more strategic, you're more efficient, you're more elegant, you have more choices. You've learned a lot of lessons if you grew. Now, if you didn't plant in the spring and work hard in the summer, You're going to weep in the fall, not reap in the fall, right? But so now this is your power period. This is when most people earn the most money in their life if they're going to grow because they've accumulated knowledge, skills, relationships, and so forth. And then the winter, because she comes back to that, 64 to 84 to 104 to the oldest humans, 124. That period is a transition period to where you become a real leader because you're no longer, that 22 to 42, you're trying to prove yourself to yourself or maybe other people or both. But there's a point when you get into your power group, you know who you are. By the time you get into this last season, this, 64 to 84, 104, 124, you know who the F you are. I mean, and you want people to like what you do, but if they don't, it's like you know who you are. You don't give a shit. I've just entered that season myself. I'm about to be 66 in a few weeks. And it's the most fulfilling season of all. It's mind-boggling. I wouldn't believe that when I was your age. That's why I'm sharing it. If you're healthy, if you're fit, if you're strong. If you don't do that, then it can be a bitch that time. But if you're healthy and strong, you have 40-year relationships, 35-year business relationships. You have friends that adore you and love them, and it's unbreakable, it's unshakable. You have an intimate relationship or a family or husband and wife relationship you've built to that point that is beyond anything you could have dreamed of or hoped for. You wake up every day and you know that life is a gift and you want to give back even more. Like you're more driven than you were when you were in the 22 to 42 stage. Those are the seasons. There's one more. There's seasons of history. And your season of history shapes how you shape your life. So you can look at 1,000 years of Roman history. I'm very much in history, and 500 years of Anglo-American history. And you start to see patterns. In fact, I'd recommend for everyone, there's a book called Generations. Have you read it?
No.
When I was working with President Clinton, in those days, I worked with President Clinton. I went across the other side and worked with the Speaker of the House, Gingrich. On the same day, on Clinton's, on his desk, on the Resolute desk, was this book, Generations. And I asked him about it. And he told me about how it's amazing. It shows how history is somewhat predictable and why the cycles are generated by different generations, how we react to the way we grew up. And then I go over to Gingrich's office, and he's a historian. He's got it on his desk.
Really?
It's a pretty thick book, good-sized book. My point is, if you want to navigate your life, you need pattern recognition so you don't go in reaction. And one thing is to understand seasons are a great pattern. They freed us. There's seasons of your life. You should think about this season. What's this season about for you? What do you want to extract from this season? And every season has predictable challenges and predictable opportunities. And where am I in the season? Some people go through their springtime during a war or wintertime. Some people go through springtime in a fall. We all grew up with different environments. And so we're shaped by that. And that's why history's changed. So, but let me finish the last piece. I've gone way long. I apologize. But I said there's 3 skills. What do we need, right? First one is pattern recognition. The second one is pattern utilization. So I watch you. Like you and I both, we developed companies, took them public very early ages, made a lot of money and figured out it wasn't just about money, right? Looking at your history, you didn't just recognize patterns, you used them. You saw them in marketing areas. You saw online opportunities. You saw things. You didn't just, now I understand it. You jumped on it. Anyone who's incredibly successful in anything, if they're great at dance, if they're great at investing in companies, if they're great in running companies, if they're great in singing, they recognize there are certain patterns. And then the final skill, and this is what I'm teaching my children, is you ultimately want to become a pattern creator. You take an example. Say you learn to play the piano, right?
Yeah.
How do you learn to play the piano? You got to recognize patterns, and usually you're taught someone else's patterns that produce something beautiful, right? Could be Bach, Beethoven, could be some rock, could be whatever you're learning. And so you learn those patterns, and you practice them. You learn to use them, right? And now you can produce the same music. There is a point, and I'm sure you've experienced this already, and you're going to experience a lot more in the next 10 years of your life. You've taken so much input in, you've recognized so many patterns that now you come through, and you become the pattern creator. And that's when you start to become the GOAT of your industry, the best of all time. If you look at, Tom Brady's a friend of mine, like he made pattern distinctions no one else made on how to keep his body strong, one of the most important ones, so you have the duration, but also how to read the defense, know what's happening. Those tools, he started to create his own patterns about how to deal with that, right? And so once you create your own patterns, you bring something to the table that's never been there before. And you bring something that's never been there before, your value goes through the roof. When I met Jim Rohn, my original personal development teacher, He changed my life radically. I went when I was 17 years old. Oh yeah, that's a great picture. That's great. I love that man. Beautiful man. What I did was I was working as a janitor. I'm in high school, sophomore year. And I had, my mom came home one day and said, we've got a friend that needs somebody to help move stuff. And I was always trying to earn some extra money. And it was the weekends. I wasn't doing the janitorial work on the weekends. So I said, okay, I'll do it, volunteer. And my dad said, yeah, you got to find out what he did. He used to be such a loser. Now he's so successful, right? And so when I went to go see this guy, I'm a hard worker, so I worked really hard. And so he took me to lunch and he starts asking me questions. I said, I want to ask you questions. And I said, my father said you used to be such a loser and now you're so successful. How'd you change your life? I'm just a kid. I wasn't trying to be funny or mean, right? The guy you said, your dad said what? He goes, well, it's true. And he said, well, what changed my life is I went to a seminar. He goes, yeah, it was, 3.5 hours. His name is Jim Rohn. He told me the whole thing. And he's here in Orange County. He's coming up to an event pretty quick. I said, could you get me in? And he goes, yeah. I said, well, how much is it? He said, $35. It'd be like $250 in today's money, right? And I said, $35? I'm making $40 a week as a janitor. Right? I said, I can't do that. He goes, well, then just learn on your own experience and waste a few decades. I said, you really think it's that valuable? He goes, no, you have to decide if it's that valuable. And so I remember I wrestled with this like it was the biggest decision of my life, a week's pay. And I went in and I heard this man speak. He said some simple things like, for things to change, you got to change. For things to get better, you got to get better, right? It was interesting things. But at the end, I was so excited. I went up to him and I said, I want to come work for you. I want to learn this. I want to be a part of this. And he turned to me and said, look, kid, he goes, if you want to come work for me, you got to go through all my programs. And I said, what does that mean? And he said, well, you got to this. It was like $1,200 for just one of the programs for a weekend. $1,200 is like $10,000 today, to give you an idea, $12,000. I'm, at the time, sleeping in my car, working as a janitor. My dad left. My mom kicked him out. Mom's a strong woman. And then she chased me out with a knife. She wasn't going to kill me, but I wasn't going back in that place. And so I'm like, I can't do this. And then somebody said, decide. He goes, some people have to survive, some people succeed. Decide which one you are. And if you're ready by next Saturday, a week from Saturday, he goes, I'm starting a training and you can join it. But if you don't have the money for it, you won't be able to do it. And I remember leaving thinking, this guy just wants my money. He's such a jerk. And I was so angry. But then in my head, I was like, he's right. I've always gotten what I had to have. I haven't had to have much. And so I started going to banks. I walked in this place, I had 5 banks turned down, and I saw this woman who looked persuadable and sweet, and her name was Mrs. Williams. This woman looks at me and she goes, the bank's not going to loan you this money. And she's like my 5th bank. And I said, you don't understand. And I got all passionate. She goes, with this kind of focus and energy, I think you can do something. I like it to be something good. And she goes, I'm going to talk to the bank, but if the bank will loan you the money, I will. If you look me in the eye and you swear to me I'm never going to have to come find you and you will take care of this. And I jumped across, hugged her and kissed her. She wasn't quite ready for that. I went to Jim Rohn's seminar. I went to work for him. And the first question when I finally got a private moment with him that I asked was, I had 4 fathers. They are all good men. They all worked hard. How come we never had any money and sometimes no food? I said, I look over at the school teacher who makes $35,000 a year, I think, in those days. And then I see this hedge fund guy who made $1 billion in a year. I said, that is so unjust. And he gave me a lesson that changed my whole life. He said, Tony, he said, you're right. We're all equal as souls, but we're not equal in the marketplace. And so what does that mean? He said, well, let me ask you a question. Is it possible for someone to make twice as much money in the same amount of time? Yeah, 4 times, 10 times, 100 times? Yeah, people do it. How? He goes, you have to become more valuable. He goes, if you go to work at McDonald's, you get this tiny little income. It's not made to be an ideal job. It's a first-time job. Anyone can learn to do it in 2 hours. And I've been obsessed about it ever since. And that changed everything in my life. My whole life became, how do I add more value? And so today I have 121 companies and we're doing $12 billion in business across almost every industry you can imagine that I'm a part of. And I couldn't run one company in the start and make it successful at 300,000 a year, for the revenue. All that became in every industry. And I've a lot of them, I'm the number one in the industry. It's because I'm obsessed with adding value. And so I think that piece is what's missing also from our youth. You're saying, like, what do they need to do? They think I'm here to get something. No, life is calling you. What are you going to give? Not just what you want to give, but what people need. And so my focus is I give people what they want. They want to make more money. They want a better relationship. But my goal is so I can give them what they need, which is a life that has more meaning. And that's one that goes beyond yourself.
It's going to be a stressful period.
Yes.
To say the least. I think algorithms are actually making our online experiences more stressful. I think
100%.
Because, they're designed to retain our attention, and the best way to retain our attention is probably fear.
Yep.
And I think this with myself, I find myself watching all these fucking short form videos that are just like, they feel like they're at some level frying something, depleting something in me. But they're designed, it's designed, the algorithm, just to serve me up the next one that's going to hold me or scare me or whatever.
Yep.
So in such a world where the algorithms are probably going to, in the online world, especially for younger kids, is going to really, it's going to be better at taking hold of us. What are the tools that I need to deal with this stress and this angst?
The first step to me would be take 15 minutes out of your day and go for micro learning. Like, decide you're going to learn what matters, right? About yourself, about AI. We tell people, like, you already have habits, right? Most people are scrolling a good portion of the day. Give me 15 of those minutes and let's do micro learning on something, a new language to stimulate your brain, philosophy, history, AI, something pragmatic, something that's valuable. It's just getting people to have some habits that, the 1% growth metaphor, right? 27 times at the end of the year. It's pretty simple. All we have to do is create a new direction. If you try to do it one giant step, it's overwhelming for people. The secret to life is chunking. Think of it this way. Some people never work out, but they eat easily. So I'll say to them, why don't you work out? And they'll give me all the reasons. And I'll say, but I'd have to join a gym. And I say, okay, well, tell me what's entailed. And they'll go, I got to look up where the gyms are. And then I got to drive to each of the gyms. And then I got to park the car each place and find it. And then I got to get out and then, hopefully get a pass. And then they take you on the tour and then they want to sit you down and sell stuff to you. And they got it back in the car and you got to drive things. And then when you go do it, let's say you sign up, then you go and you got to check in and take off all your clothes. And then they drop and get wrinkled. And then you go work out and it's sweaty. You got to wipe other people's sweat off. And then afterwards you got to go do a shower and your hair's messed up and your makeup. And you got to start all over and everything else. And then you got to get the thing and you got to back out. It's like, it's too much work. What does it take to eat? Oh, you just go. They chunk eating is one thing. They chunk working out is 29,000 things, right? So if you chunk too big, try to do everything in one bite, it's overwhelming. And if you chunk it too small, it's overwhelming. So there's a different size for different things. And if we want to learn and grow, which is what the secret is to your future, is to become a learning machine about what matters. Like, most people major in minor things. They know more about some actresses or actors' love life than they do, or their skin regimen, than they do about their own values and needs and what makes them tick as a human being. Today, you can learn from the brightest, smartest people on earth. They're available. They're available by online. They're available by contracting or coaching. They're everywhere. There isn't a limit anymore. There's zero limit, except you're deciding to be a creator and not a maintainer. So you're deciding, I'm not just going to manage my life. I'm going to design and create something because the tools are available everywhere. And so I'm just one of those.